Your life is the greatest work of art. You're both the creator and you're the masterpiece. So that to me is what living your best life really is. It's not about perfection, it's about courage. It's the courage to keep evolving and courage to listen to the inner voice, even when that path ahead feels really uncertain. It's courage.
Hello, beautiful questers, and a warm welcome to the OneQuest podcast. We are absolutely delighted to have you with us on this journey of learning and self-discovery.
Our guests are not just mentors in wellness and self-improvement, they are adventurers at heart, sharing their unique paths and life lessons.
If you enjoy our show, please subscribe and share. Your support enables us to feature more amazing guests and deliver impactful conversations. Please note that some episodes may cover sensitive topics like abuse, mental health struggles, and personal challenges. Hello, and welcome back to the OneQuest podcast, where we explore what it truly means to awaken your potential and live with greater awareness, intention, and connection. Today's conversation centers around a powerful question: what does it really mean to live your best life? Not as an ideal or a concept, but as a lived experience shaped by the choices we make, the way we relate to ourselves, and the depth at which we're willing to exchange or engage with life. So our guest today is Michele Jones, coach, mentor, speaker, and author of the Amazon best-selling book, Live Your Best Life, as well as Bringing Life to Leadership. With more than 25 years of experience, Michele has devoted her work to supporting people in creating meaningful change in the way they live, lead, and show up for themselves and others. Her work really brings together self-awareness, mindset, and purposeful action in a way that's both practical and deeply transformative, helping people move beyond autopilot and into a more conscious, empowered way of living. Michele also shares 3 programs here on OneQuest: the Beginner Meditation, a 21-day Live Your Best Life Manifesting Challenge, and her signature Live Your Best Life Blueprint program, which I have completed myself and is just absolutely delicious. And each of them are designed to really help people connect with themselves and develop clarity and confidence and really begin consciously shaping their future. Michele, it's so wonderful to have you with us today.
I am so pleased to be here with you, Catherine, and also nice to meet you too, Steph.
Thank you.
I haven't met you before, so thank you so much for taking the time to allow us to share what living your best life means, and how I potentially can help people do that.
Absolutely. I mentioned that beautiful blueprint program that you have, but before we sort of dive into all of your amazing courses, I just would love to kick off with, what does living your best life really mean to you? Like, if you had to sort of pull it down into a nutshell, what does that mean?
I get asked this question a lot, as you can probably imagine. And if I could say it in a nutshell, it is literally around embracing all of life. Sometimes people think that when we shine a light on the best part of it, that it's actually not paying attention to the things that people consider sometimes the worst part of it. So it's around all of life and what that means to you, for you to be living and breathing or designing, creating, and then living your own version of what that means for you. So it's a very personalized piece. What it means to every individual is going to be different. But it really was born from, I guess, a really simple, powerful question that I kept asking myself. And these questions actually started early for me in my life. And it was, what does it really mean to live life? And I think over time, it made me resonate more and more around, well, what if that could be the best expression of who I was? So that is where I got very intentional. And if we kind of go back to where it birthed itself, it was crystal clear that this was the work that had to be done for my life from about the age of 15. And I started doing that at 15, and I did it in all the areas where I put myself in with that ethos. Is that we all have those opportunities, and we need to understand with intention and purpose where we are, what we're doing, and bring ourselves into the present moment to be engaging fully with life. So it is a life force. It is the thing that we're innately born with. So it is a wisdom. And I think that we have systems around us that sometimes can muddy it, and sort of, I liken it in my book to almost like an archaeological dig, because sometimes there's just layers of, a little bit of mud, or maybe just a little bit of pebbles, or it may be a raging flood water that's put lots and lots of mud and depth to what you are trying to expose from the origin of who you truly are. So it's about getting back to the truth of that. And that then transposed itself into how I could move with that through all areas of the life that I was creating for myself. Yeah, hopefully that helps.
There's so much to talk about, I feel, and you must see some great transformations for people. And but before we go back and kind of dive into some of these stages that you went through to create the program and key that phrase, live your best life, is there anything that you're currently working on, a passion project or something that's got you really excited? Like, you've got lots that you've done, but like, surely there's more on the cards, right?
Oh, absolutely. Right now, I do a lot of fundraising and philanthropic work, and I'm really immersed in the work that I'm bringing to life for CEOs and organizations and frameworks within organizations for humans to thrive. And that literally is the epicenter, if you ask me, from working with organizations for many, many years now, over 35 years globally. And the revolution, in my own understanding, that if you can make individual humans thrive in workplaces, then organizations will thrive. But not only that, that thriving human then goes back to impact their thriving family, then their community, and then the nation, and then hopefully a nation impacts the globe. So it's a big process, but it's simple too, because it really goes back to the core of connection and human connection. And that's where every piece of work that I ever undertake is, that's where it is immersed from. And I think that's the evolution of what living your best life is helping people step into what I'm now calling evolutionary leadership. So that's my current passion project, but I'm doing that in partnership with an organization called Thriving Nations. And that's a collaborative venture where we're looking at how we can measure different pillars within organizations that are different to the normal metrics of organizations. So where organizations are generally measuring their KPIs or their productivity or their profits or their risk scores, this is actually delving into humanistic well-being within every workplace, and then looking at culture and leadership that's shaping that. Then we look at the productivity, and then we look at how sustainable it is. And then in today's world, we're also then looking at how they are expressing that with multi-human beings, so diversity and inclusion. So yeah, so it's not leadership in the traditional corporate sense, but leadership of your own life. And if you are expressing yourself as a thriving human being in that organization, then of course the organization will thrive. So it's a purpose alignment piece, and it's inviting constant feedback. So it works on a 360-degree feedback loop with all stakeholders associated to that organization, 24/7. So anyone can give feedback from any part of the supply chain. And that's really keeping people honest, and it's really keeping the organization progressive. And I'm really loving what's coming out of that at the moment.
So just a small passion project, you're saying?
Yeah, just a little one. Yeah. It's interesting though, if I could touch on it, because I've noticed a shift in 35 years, definitely in the last 10 years, towards the deeper spiritual practices that are now accepted within workplaces. So it's now not uncommon for entrepreneurs or organizations or leaders of organizations to now want to start workshops, sessions the day with a meditation or a tuning in. And I just think that there is just already hitting the productivity piece. It's hitting the well-being piece. It's hitting the leadership and culture piece, saying you matter, and us tuning in together before we commence the work we now have as the opportunity today. So that itself is elevating the piece beyond anything. And it's really been quite warming to my heart that each time a master leads something, I get to lead it through a meditation practice to actually allow that opportunity of connection on a different level. And for me, that's pretty special, because I think that I'm qualified in moksha meditation, so that's around liberation from suffering. So if you can remove that as a concept in a workplace already, that's a really great translation of ancient teaching into a modern way of life and business. So, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And look, it's so important, though, for us to really have big impact in our community, in our workplaces. It starts with the individual. And as we become more in alignment, then everything else around us does too. So, I love that there's so much emphasis is now put in workplaces in that personal well-being, and also taking that full responsibility of your personal well-being too. But how much by doing that you can impact all those around you, and like you said, productivity, and how the team works, how independently they work, but also as a group, how coherent they are.
It's so true, Catherine, because when you have the alignment piece, what I know now to be true is that the speed of execution for productivity accelerates. And it's literally just, it's like you see it just fall into place, and then it goes like rocket fuel. Whereas before that, it feels hard, and it feels like you're in the drudgery, the trenches, and it feels heavy. And then all of a sudden, when the alignment kicks in, it all just goes like, I think of it like a spinal cord. I don't know why, but that alignment piece of just like, the elongated spine, all of a sudden everything is just, it elevates the mission of whatever everyone's working towards. And why that just dropped in for me was just thinking about a piece of what we've been doing with the Thriving Nations is all of a sudden we had like this measurement system that took maybe 2 or 3 years to try and develop. But then you bring in the right people at the right time, and something that was really hard to develop all of a sudden becomes really quick and efficient, and the right minds at the right time allowing that to evolve. And then all of a sudden, it was like within 4 or 5 weeks, then all of a sudden this other piece popped out. And it's on a pilot now in the Hunter Valley or Hunter region here in New South Wales, and it's called the Wellbeing Passport. So now we're getting in front of when employees of organisations may be needing to access support for wellbeing, rather than it being reactive on the other end of it when, they may be facing burnout or absenteeism is high, or, they're disengaged or disillusioned a lot of the time. We're now bringing it to the forefront. So a wellbeing passport is invested into through the organisation. The wellbeing passport then allows the organisation to say, invest X amount of money to wellbeing for its employees. And then me as the employee, I get to answer a questionnaire that is just all about me and what I need to consider myself a wellbeing. And then I get to spend the company's dollars by way of a coupon to actually access those services. So now you're creating environments within workplaces that allow that to be, something that can be done on work time, where the employer is investing in me to stay well. So it's just changing the trajectory of how these things can end up. So very responsive rather than reactive. But that just happened like that because we had that one piece right, and all the service providers were like, this is a no-brainer, because they get exposure and they potentially get chosen. They get to share their gifts and their work to keep people well. And then you have people doing different things that are just suited and tailored specifically to them. So you're not trying to pigeonhole anyone to say well-being must be done in this way. Yeah.
Especially if someone's not accustomed to taking care of themselves. If the workplace is saying, we'll help you with the coupon or whatever, it might incentivize that person to take one step. Just try.
One step.
Yeah. So important. I've got a mate tradie, builder. He wouldn't in his life go and get a massage ever. And it's like, go on, mate. Like, I'm sure you need it after all those years of working on a construction site. But I can't remember if it was the Safe Work statistic and report or the Global Wellness Institute statistic. I think it was a localized one, and not that we want to make it about money, but it reported that for every dollar that was invested by a corporate, they got $4 worth of productivity in return.
Yeah, it's huge.
Just by doing wellness programs,
Yeah, we've been looking at what is the gross national prosperity and putting a figure on it. And when you start looking at the measurement of things like absenteeism, burnout, and so forth, and there's a long list, it represents almost around a $1 million loss in revenue for any organisation across the country. And it's billions of dollars that are being lost in this country every single year because people aren't looking after their people. So one little shift, one little step, like you say, has the potential to have a really strong compound effect to really shift those numbers. And we sort of started off bold, but we really can see it is going to actually have the result, hopefully, we're looking for. Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Headed in the right direction.
Yeah. And then it becomes more than live your best life, it's live our best life, right?
Well, we all know that that's the whole thing at the end of the day.
Yeah.
The oneness of all of creation.
Exactly.
Exactly. But people can't see it's about us or we when they're maybe not exposed to that or haven't had that sense of trust in self yet or trust in others. And I think that those steps need to have relevancy to the journey. They are really critical. Most people in my models that I teach are usually sort of swinging like on a pendulum from survival, connection, and empowerment. And a lot of people can't sustain that empowerment piece, which is around self and others. They can do it for self, they can do it for others, but having the union of those things come together is where the shift starts to occur. So if you put that into the context of an organization, if an organization leads that way, then you're probably going to accelerate the connection to empowerment piece, but without missing those juicy lessons along the way that allow people to have the wisdom, realize that they already carried. So they need to have skin in the game, or for the rubber to hit the road, so to speak, of being able to realize I already knew that. I just needed to trust myself.
Yeah. To ignite that remembering.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, fantastic.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, you've got some pretty big goals that you're ticking off at the moment. If we go back, where did you start this journey? Because you've you said you started at 15. You've come from being a 15-year-old with this concept of living your best life through to now working to change, corporates on a really big level and impacting, thousands of people.
Well, back to that piece I was just talking about around the challenges that come along, and you've got to experience them. I think everyone can, at different points in their life, if they're still here to share and speak into it, that this is the challenge where the growth occurs. So for me, that moment was pivotal at the age of 15, and it was pivotal because I was on a pretty crappy trajectory, if I can say that word. It wasn't looking too good. A lot of things going on around me and my family life, excelling at school, but doing it for probably all the wrong reasons, just trying to be seen by family members who weren't present at the time, trying to also not be at home. So I would overcommit to preschool activities, post-school activities, and everything I could extra mile on, to say the least. But I was not really healthy either. I had severe asthma, and this was just after coming back from traveling in an ambulance, stopping breathing, and waking up in ICU 2 weeks later, intubated, with my mum by my bed going, what happened? Wow. I remember getting in the ambulance And I was recovering from that, and I was very, very fortunate that my dad sort of put his hand in to pull me up. And that is a really important piece of connection for that change to start to occur, to trust others sometimes before we can trust ourselves again. And he sent me off to a personal development on a personal development journey, and he sent me to a seminar in the Gold Coast in Australia called The Greatness in You. And so this was like a 5-day lockdown, hand your watch in at the door, no concept of time, no idea what was about to happen. And let's just say that became the basis of, like, I left those 5 days having given all I could in that room. And I remember they used to have this piece of carpet where every time you wanted to go and dump something out of you, you just go over to the carpet and dump it out. And it was called I don't know if we're allowed to use language, but it was, let's just say, the poo mat. And it literally, when I graduated, they chose songs that represented our individual journeys, and we were like put on a chair around a circle with everyone who attended. And in that room, I think I was one of the youngest. There was maybe a 12-year-old. I was 15, and all the way up to 75 or 77 years of age was in that room, and there was about 15 of us. And they played The Greatest Love of All by Whitney Houston on my graduation song. And I literally made a promise and a pact to that room that this is going to be where I dedicate my life's effort to. And then I came out of there, and my life just was completely ready to go. Like, I think about what I did between 15 to 17, but in a different way, like by having resolved things in my family, expression to my family, and really sort of saying, this has got to change. I moved out of home for a little while at that age before coming back to new boundaries and new ways of sort of doing life with my family. And I think that also, being reliant on self and trusting self and so forth. That's where it all began. And I started to shape things at that time. Like, I was youth mayor for Lake Macquarie Council, being able to have initiatives for youth, to expose these types of things to them. That led to Young Australian of the Year through the Australia Day Awards. And then those types of things gave me access to proximity to share and just hold space and just start to learn and listen. So I had no training, obviously, other than my own experience. But yeah, it was at a crossroads after being in my career for quite some time that I was like, I need to add more value. How can I make that happen? And, I was a bit blur with where I was at the time. I felt like I'd done a lot, but it was like, what's next? And instead of leaving the work that I knew that I really wanted to express, I just became intentional about learning. And I think that at the key of it, if I actually think back to your first question, I always say that living your best life to me is around learning, and that no one's above and no one is below, that everyone's got something to teach and everyone's got something to also receive. So yeah, I think learning is the key. Continuing to always realize that just because I see it today this way doesn't mean I cannot see it another way tomorrow. And that maybe if I looked at that particular way of doing that, what does it open me up to? So to me, it's like this playground of white space, and the learning comes when we sort of stretch out into that white space to seek. Even though for me, it's around what am I learning? How does that make me a better human? So I guess to wrap that up, it was literally a fascination with human potential from that point. And why is it that some people can thrive and others just seem stuck? And being able to then have my own experience of how that was for me. Yeah, that's probably the best way I could answer that for you.
Yeah, that's well-rounded. So along the way, most people have some sort of challenges that they face whether it's personal challenges, whether it's business challenges, whatever it is. And as you said, I love the way that you said it. When we are in the darkness, sometimes that is what creates the best outcome, as long as we can get ourselves through it. And sometimes that can be really challenging.
Yeah.
But like, I think for some of our audience, they might be looking for a story like yours, and they're thinking, oh, if I head down this path, I might be able to do this and change my life and move into this and become a meditation instructor or something. Like, along the way for yourself, aside from personal challenges, did you face some real challenges with this whole, I'm 15, I know what I want to do, I'm going to go push it and push it and push it and design it and recreate it? And like, what did that story look like?
Oh, absolutely. I had no challenges at all with that.
That's ballsy.
Yeah. 15-year-old, no, you know,
Yeah.
15-year-old, nothing, and no one wants to hear. But over time, what I realized, and I will answer the question on what did I overcome, but when you tune into the essence of who you are, that's where your clues are. So the essence of who I was as that 15-year-old was to listen, learn, hold space, and then offer insight or have inquiry start to take place within that person, even lightly as a 15-year-old. And when I realized that around the essence, I looked at, I tracked back now and look at what I'd done. Like I left school after the examples I've already given you, and I decided I wanted to do nutrition and dietetics at the time, but then chose medicine, but then ended up going, 6 years, let's just study for 4 and do nursing. The essence of who I am is the same as a nurse. Then I ran and managed bars, and the essence of who I was behind that bar was exactly the same as who I was as a 15-year-old, a nurse, and so forth. Then I got into the work I'm doing now as a 20-year-old, and I'm like 21-year-old, and I'm like, the essence of who I was is still the same. But I had this little stint in travel and tourism thinking I want to be a tour guide, travel the world. That was still the same. I wanted to be with people experiencing, adventuring, and so forth. So I think tuning into the essence of who you are allows you the clue to be able to overcome the challenge. Because if you don't understand your essence, then you don't understand how it may be operating like in the operating system of your life in the background. So when you get clear on what is it that I always do, and you can then discern, is this actually serving me, serving others, or is it not? That's when you can start to realize. But I think the challenges that you overcome, ultimately, they come back to always growth. I think if I think about the biggest challenge I overcame, especially when we think back to that initial journey, it's learning to navigate uncertainty and then learning how to still trust that inner compass, which is the essence of who you are. And I think that's the hardest part. That's actually the hardest part, because building businesses or leading people, organizations, and I guess continuing to evolve personally, they all require the same thing, is to walk in the unknown and to be able to do it over and over and over again and be okay with not knowing until you know. And that's the learning part. So I think we at all as a human being are going to experience the same sort of things at some point, you know, whether that's a personal heartbreak or a loss or a moment where life just doesn't go the way we expect it to go. And it's our responsibility to take those teachings, understand what they give us in terms of resilience, but then also to have the compassion. So this is where the black and the white of the Live Your Best Life brand is personified, because black and white, everyone kind of goes, why didn't you use any color in your brand? And I'm like, because it's always around the black and the white, the duality, and you've got to have the shadow to experience the light. And so therefore you've got to have this grit and resilience and determination to also have the softness of the compassion and the vulnerability and I guess the awakening. So it doesn't usually happen in ego state or push state. It usually comes when we least expect it, and usually in a moment of silence. For me, that's when I am in nature or sitting in meditation. Or once I stand from meditation, a lot drops in. And sometimes it just happens when I'm in the shower with water, wherever water is present.
Yep.
Yeah.
And just for the audience and myself, like sometimes we find ourselves in that darkness again, and you're speaking exactly like the theory, the steps, the way that we can work through this. This is what we need, a bit of grit, and this is what we've got to take the learning from it and all these sorts of things. But sometimes when we find ourselves back in there, even though we might be practitioners or well versed in this whole, like, even then it can be challenging to bloody pull ourselves out of it, can't it?
Absolutely. And I think that's where you've got to just be completely honest. There's something that I hear a lot in business, and it grates on me. Oh, leave your emotions at the front door, at the back door when you walk in the front door at work, or just minimizing the human for what they may be experiencing on that journey. And it's something I'm really passionate about rewiring, because our emotions are our fuel, and they are the source of understanding ourselves. And a lot of people say allowing the emotions to work for you or against you, but I think it's understanding what the emotion is trying to express to you. And that's the difference, because it's quite contradictory when I'm steeped in ancient wisdom learning, but also the realization that sometimes people can't even sit still and be okay to sit with themselves, and you're asking them to sit still. So it's around really understanding how are those emotions working for that individual. So that's how it is for me. Like I've gone through, a lot of loss in the last year and a half, and for me it was just being really honest about that, and realizing honesty was only going to be my way through, because that's back to innate wisdom and truth and trust and core. Trying to gloss over it or put more mud into the archaeological dig is just going to mean I've got to do the work again later. So I guess what happens as a practitioner is you have a little bit more awareness, and I think that it's the conscious awareness that is probably the critical piece here, is that if you just ignore it, I liken it to brushing like piles of dirt under a carpet, and then all of a sudden you turn around one day and you're like, where did all that stuff under my carpet come from? Because we try and cover it up, because we try and put on brave faces, and we try and just soldier on at times. But the pause, I think, is the absolute essential part to honor yourself, and then learn how to express what that is. Because if you don't language it, then there's a part of the next part of claiming your power that just doesn't step up, and it doesn't step up with an authenticity to it. It steps up with a bit of a pretense and an ego, and then you got to go back anyway and kind of try and rewire it. So it's not easy, and I don't think that it's easy. In fact, a lot of people often say, oh, living your best life, that's all about, as I said earlier, the positive side. I'm like, it's not about, the rainbows and magical unicorns at all. It's about being prepared to face yourself. Because I also get irritated when I hear just fake it till you make it. I'm like, no, we've got to face it until we make it to wherever that means that I want to go, and where I decided that I want to move next in the world. So, and I like what you said earlier, Steph. I think it's also about just taking that next step. Like, what is the next right step for me? You don't need to know the rest of it. Yeah, and sometimes sitting still for a little while until you know what that step needs to be is the best thing that you can do. Because otherwise you end up sort of just creating for the sake of creating, and sometimes that works out, and most of the time it ends with a few regrets. But I think it's just staying centered, coming back to center, not forcing your answers. In some ways, it's around listening to yourself.
Yeah. And do you feel as though like that's really how you deal with your sort of any self-doubt or uncertainty, to really sort of sit in that place. You mentioned honesty and truth and trust. I think they're so important and so pivotal in us being able to relinquish control, and be in that vulnerable space. And I love how you've spoken to that, because I feel as though that is something that is really challenging to do, is to relinquish control and really sit in that space of feeling uncomfortable and having the self-doubt and feeling uncertain and not being sure, but really then opening and listening. Like, that's...
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think that it's also, for me, not just about sitting in that space. I like to move in that space. So I like to allow things to move through me. So I love bushwalking. I love walking with my dogs. So I'll just like take myself out and just walk, but with no real engagement with anything else other than nature around me. Like, no, I'm not contactable on the phone. Maybe I listen to a podcast, but only and only when I've done X amount of things that just feel like I'm tuned in. I don't have anywhere to really be. I don't necessarily have to subscribe to anything right now. But if I just allow myself to be, I'm going to learn to trust myself with each step too, because sometimes you don't know where a bushwalk's going to take you.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's not just for me around like the meditating monk sitting in the mountain, but it is literally around being the mountain and allowing whatever life force that's been generated from that mountain to move through me. But it is silent. It's silent at the same time that it speaks really loudly. So it's a hard thing to language from my own experience sometimes. But I know that nature and movement is one of my things. So if I was answering one of those questionnaires, that would be where I recharge or where I get a lot of my answers. But also through, I love writing. So it's just around sometimes dumping out things, not so much journaling, but writing whatever's top of mind and being okay with whatever emotion is sitting and percolating under the surface and paying witness to it to some extent.
Definitely. Do you feel like when you allow that emotion to move, that brings the clarity in of itself?
It does. And sometimes it still says, don't move yet. You don't need to make a decision just yet. Because quite often in leadership, the notion is make decisions rapidly. What decisions are you making today? You're not making multi-decisions and you're not leading effectively. And it's sometimes flipping that narrative on, well, what if the only decision you had to make today was to not make a decision? What would be present if you weren't forcing it and allowing that to rise up? Because once again, leadership can be one-dimensional. And it's not trusting other people's wisdom to rise in that moment too. So I think it's around just allowing something to sit for a while and see how it germinates and see how it rises by itself, because that organic growth cuts through eventually. Like, you just have to look to nature for that. A seedling will always find its way to the sunshine through the dirt. Sometimes you have to have the patience and not force it. And that's definitely something I've learned as I've gotten older. It's not something, I was very hustle grind mentality as I moved into business and leadership initially. And I think the feedback I constantly got was what I'm passionate about now, is that my adrenal system would burn out. I would have big stints where I was unwell, and it's not the way. It's just not the way. Yeah, for me, and I don't see that it's sustainable for a lot of organizations that work like that now. It's not sustainable.
I had a fun little experience recently, which is completely off topic, but it just came up for me. I love my chili, so I dried out all my chili seeds, and I was constantly trying to plant my seed and trying to get it to germinate. And I tried so many different methods, and in the sunshine, out of the sunshine, whatever. And in the end, I just got the jack of it, and I said stuff, and I got all the seeds and just chucked them in the soil, and then they all just grew. And I was like, oh, of course, now you all grow at the same time. Yeah. So
Now
maybe,
you've got all hybrid chilies happening.
yeah. So, but along the way, did you have any mentors? Did you have personalities, figures, people who really inspired you that helped guide all of this live your best life methodology?
Oh, of course I did. I mean, that goes back to the understanding of even just stepping into a room like Greatness in You and being guided and facilitated. I mean, I still remember Lyle and Gail Lovett, like as if they were, the first things that I ever just were in awe of. I've got so many that I could rattle off. I mean, I believe we're in a learning planet, so if I haven't had a mentor via a podcast or a video or anything I can access at certain times, like that to me is just like a multi-day experience. But if I was to draw on a few and really go who spoke the loudest to me, it's super hard. I think the greatest teachers can be authors that aren't even speaking to you, philosophers and spiritual thinkers that you can't even access or ask a question to. Sometimes it can just be something that you find on YouTube and you go, oh my gosh, how come I didn't know that? But in my early days of studying, even as a 15-year-old, my dad gave me books by Andrew Matthews about being happy and just basic things that I use. I use those books. I still have them in leadership training to this very day, because I think so much of the principles of leadership just are recycled and it's finding the right voice. When I started studying quantum physics and things along that line, Carl Jung and just the teachings of his mind were just really profound. But then if I went into leadership, I'd go even just for productivity. I mean, Stephen Covey, who hasn't read a good Stephen Covey book at some point or another? But recently, if I sort of bring that in a little bit closer, I'd say The Mountain Is You podcast or book by Brianna Wiest. Again, never met her in person, but they've all just had this opportunity to allow human transformation occur within me. So I avidly pick up books. I'd also say from an educational point of view, I've been exposed to Sharon Pearson or Remy Pearson, and she probably runs one of the biggest global coaching institutes now that is probably got the most accreditation attached to it. And that's where I did all my studies, from starting out as a life coach and then going, oh, there's something in this. I think I spent a year and a half thinking I was learning life coaching, but it was all around my own map of the world and understanding myself. So I went back and studied it again. But yeah, that led itself to like leadership coaching, wellbeing coaching, business coaching, executive coaching. And I just kept getting that evolutionary leadership concept embedded into myself, because then it went into practitioner style certifications, whether that was in hypnosis or through the Coaching Institute or the Global Success Institute. Anyway, that lent itself to like the International Coaches Guild and Master Practitioner, Advanced Practitioner, International Professional Master Coaching. And it just kind of goes from there, because the more that you go up in these levels of your own self or evolutionary leadership of self, it's like thinking that you can't climb a mountain, and then you get to the top and the view's completely different. So what you want to reach out and access is completely different. But I was so fortunate where I live to just be exposed to some of the best yoga and meditation teachers that I've ever come across. In Hanuman Das here in Toronto locally, and Ginny Clark in yoga. Like, these people and their community have shaped so much around who I am to this day, just by teaching me things that I never knew how to access. So I think mentorship evolves. I think it has to. And sometimes you go back to reading or listening to something that you've read before, and it's completely shifted your understanding of those teachings because of who you are evolving into or becoming, or relearning who to be. So, and this is why with the Live Your Best Life piece of work, or even the book, we have people who repeat it every single year. They just know that they are ready for something new to evolve out of those teachings. So that's something we really, really encourage. So can I say one? Absolutely not, because I think anyone I meet is a mentor.
I love
Yeah,
that.
it's like I've actually sat and had cups of tea with Catherine, and I'm like sit there going, oh my gosh, really? Like I walk away feeling enlightened. So yeah, I think yoga retreats doesn't matter. We're not above, we're not below, we are side by side. So someone next to you has the ability to offer mentorship.
I love your insatiable thirst for learning. Like I just love it. It's so beautiful to have that beginner's mindset there. Like all the time. That childlike awe and wonder of what else can I learn? How else can I expand? And not just like I know we've talked a lot about leadership in business and in corporate, but at the end of the day, we're leading ourselves too. We're the captain of our own ship, and leadership is in so many different like facets of our lives, not just ourselves. We're leading our families, we're stepping up in ways that we can't even imagine for other people that we haven't even met. So, I think it's fascinating that, that, that real want to learn and that thirst for knowledge is so beautiful. And I think as part of that, you know, it's easy, like you said, for us to think, oh, this is our goal and we want to get to that goal. Like you said, you get to the top of the mountain and the view looks fantastic, but then you realize there's 3 more mountains ahead. And it's like you get to this point and you think, oh, I'm supposed to be happy then. But it's like, oh, actually, there's just so much more. It's just open the door to something new again. And so it's like this constant, rabbit hole of almost like a warren that appears. And it's like, oh, my goodness, I had no concept that it was, this extraordinary, which I just love. So I guess as part of that, if we're not defining success as being like some goal that we have to attain or that we get to the top of the mountain and, we've reached where we need to be and here's the pinnacle, do you feel that there is something that we can define as success or that you define as success or how you measure that?
Yeah, this is a great LYBL philosophy question, actually, because that definition of success has also evolved a lot for me over the years, to the point that I was just speaking into, I guess. So, and I just kind of alluded to it as well, because early in life it was about achievement. What am I building? What am I creating? What milestones am I reaching? Yeah, but today it's probably a lot more holistically that I see success. And I think the key word is alignment. And I think that alignment comes with that place of evolution that you're currently at. And if not, then you're constantly in this battle. So I think it has to be aligned with that essence of who you are. Waking up every day knowing that what you're about to express is in alignment with your current values. And I've done a lot of values work over the years. And what I find really fascinating about it, it's linked to the essence of who someone is. But what happens is as they evolve, it's like the word or meaning gets up leveled. So it might be when they're sort of in the early stages of, say, connecting to who they sort of are, they might value being a student. And then as they get a little bit more empowered, they might value learning. Then as they get a little bit more on their evolutionary journey, usually you hear things like, I just value wisdom, like it's the same word just expressed in a different hierarchy of evolution. And I think that's the key is we're all going to have a value set. How we express it is entirely our imprint and blueprint. But do I know what my values are? And I didn't get too fixated on that. I just had to look to the actions that I was drawn to naturally. And then asking myself, is this kind of leading me to where I really want to be? And if not, I've got to change trajectory. So, purpose is thrown around a lot. And I don't think it's necessarily about getting clear on your purpose. It's just an understanding a lot more around how you're operating as an individual and how's it making you feel, because the feelings that we have then literally will dictate the next thought that comes along, and that thought is then going to dictate who you choose to be in that moment, because that thought will dictate the action. Then that action will then give you feedback, and then it will be what you end up doing to have what you ultimately wanted to have. So this is where emotions and feelings are really important, and we can't discount them because they are a chemical response in the body, and it's very hard to negate them. You can negate them, but you have to be consciously aware that you can negate them and that you can reprogram them. But a lot of people don't know that. And so the feeling that they had creates the thought. Then they are about to be someone that's either going to be who that is in alignment with who they are or not, as to how they see themselves. That then will dictate what they do and ultimately what they have. And usually the feedback is, I don't have what I want. So it's like, no.
Yeah.
So alignment is probably the strongest word that I can probably say in terms of success. So because that will lead you to the evolution as to where you need to be now, because it's not like you can skip a step. Evolution doesn't skip a step. So and that's been proven as well, like our little germinating seeds too, like they have to undertake a process. So you can't just be, and this is where people get goal setting, I think, really wrong, where there's no alignment and there's no sort of reality check on my feelings and my thoughts aligned as well, because people set goals and they're usually so far out there that then they get disillusioned because, oh, well, I've set that goal now for 3 months, nothing's really changed. Oh, obviously I'm going to probably say the same thing again, but there's really no vested part of that person really thinking that it's going to happen. So if you step it back, wind it back, and you actually think about the next right move that's aligned for me today, that's going to set me up to moving that way, I'm going to feel so lit up internally about that. And that becomes the fuel. That's the source. And that's where burnout and things don't occur if you get that right. And that's what we spend a lot of time on, getting clear for what that means for someone today and checking in that is that the same thing that they think tomorrow, because it's a journey and it is evolving constantly, but change can happen in an instant if you're aligned.
Yeah. And I think sometimes these big words can paint such a huge picture that it can feel so impossible to climb that mountain. So as you said, bringing it back to just 1%ers, small wins. The smallest little thing I got through today and I put a smile on my face, that's a success in some people's eyes. And if we can simplify it down to just what does it take for me to get to the end of the day, to the end of the week, to the end of the month, whatever it is, and somehow find gratitude along the way. Like, looking up for that moment when you're out doing your dog walk and just looking at the beautiful sunrise and just being like, wow, how amazing is life. That might be success measured for the day for some people. That might be everything that they needed to have a beautiful day, to get through the day. So it's
that's so well said. Yeah, that's so well said. Because, what are we really attaining at the end of the day? And, you hear all the feedback that comes from the wishes of the dying, I guess, because our life is measured in the physical sense here on earth. So most people wanted to have more time to watch the sunrise and the sunset, or to take a walk in nature, or connect with people they love. It's not, I wish I had like another Lamborghini sitting in my or whatever it is for people. Yeah. And I've actually gone through that physical attainment journey of then going, really? I actually want to live a much more simple life. So, even making those changes throughout my own journey has been really key, with less clutter and more simplification. That actually for me has sped up what I do work on, interestingly, and the results come a lot sooner. So I think when we sort of cut out some of those clutter things that maybe are what we think we should do, or is projected onto us, that maybe that's how what a good life looks like. But putting ourselves in the designing seat of that, knowing that anything is possible, it has a different air of creation. And then people feel like they're living rather than they're just doing. And my whole thing is, we're not humans doing, we're humans being. So we can get caught up. And I was the queen of the to-do list, and the to-do list ruled my life. So yeah, let that stuff go.
And for yourself now, is there a ritual or something that helps you win? Like, you've done a lot of training, you've got a lot of skills up your sleeve. Surely there's something that you can find yourself, if you've forgotten to do it for a little while, you might revert back, or maybe it's just embedded in your daily routine. Is there anything that you can share with our audience that is your secret sauce?
It sounds so basic when I say it, and I know I've already probably touched on some of them, for meditation or walking in nature. For me, sleep is good too, because I never used to be someone who slept. But it's stop looking outward and only start to really understand that in the moment that you have to turn inward, that's when you get to ask yourself a deeper question. And that deeper question generally sets that alignment piece and the trajectory as to what that next step might look like. And I really love what you're saying about the one percenters. I use that really vigorously in leading organizations as a CEO. I literally, we're not grandiose about that. It's very simple. And I think then it becomes achievable and attainable. So I love to strip my life back. So here it goes. What I do is I wake up in the morning and I play my day as to how I'd love for it to go, like a movie. And I sort of future pace myself through the day. I see myself doing what I'd like to be doing. I see myself moving through the day. I see who I'm speaking with. I'm seeing where's my energy going. I'm looking at glitches in the matrix that might, present themselves, because they might be things that I'm challenged with at the moment, or I'm just sort of scanning the day and setting that kind of clear pathway towards, well, if I'm the ultimate designer, even though I'm very much appreciative that there's a greater force at play a lot of the time, but I've got to realize I'm actually part of that greater force. So to do that puts me in sort of my position for the day of self-responsibility and self-accountability, and that puts it more introspective. So I get to decide how I show up. I get to decide how I have a conversation. I get to decide what I'm going to focus on. And that's probably been the biggest secret sauce, and it doesn't sound like much. But what I do at the end of the day, though, is I sit in meditation and I replay that movie all the way back to when I got out of bed in the morning. And then I offer the gratitude. So it's kind of like a reset back to, like, it's a level playing ground every single day. And if I'm ultimately the designer, because we're all part of this big creation, if we work with the ethos of we are the oneness of it all, then that ultimately means that we get a say. So
Absolutely.
yeah, that's probably it. It's always self-inquiry. Like, how am I showing up for, my family or others or myself today? Yeah.
That's fantastic. I love the fact that you not only set that very, very clear intention for the day and work your way through it, it's also that looking back is fantastic. And like, I found with my own gratitude practice that when I started to program that at night I'd be looking back and I'd be looking for all of the amazing things that I'm grateful for, then it changed my whole life, because then during the day I was clocking every single thing I was grateful for, and then I just started living gratefully, and it was like, wow. And then everything you have gratitude for. So it's that in itself is such a beautiful practice that can be so life-changing. I find that something really beautiful. And for me, like that's one of the ways that I live my best life, by having that gratitude and being really heart first, and coming from that place of just seeing everything, every person that I meet, every opportunity I have as an opportunity for growth. If if I were to say to you, like, as a overall, what your most important kind of tip would be for our listeners to live their best life, because you've given us so many amazing ways that you've done that yourself. Is it possible to distill that down?
Yeah, absolutely. It's not, living your best life is not about perfection. Because people wait too long for it all to line up, but it's about courage. It's the courage to keep evolving, and courage to listen to the inner voice, even when that path ahead feels really uncertain. I think it also comes down to the willingness to grow through every experience that life brings you, and that's the black and the white. And when you're scanning the day and rewinding the day, like you say, Catherine, it's that gratitude for the black and the white. I think because ultimately your life is the greatest work of art that you can ever express on the planet. So you're both the creator and you're the masterpiece. So that, to me, is what living your best life really is. It's not about the perfection. It's courage. Listen, inner voice. Even when you feel scared or you don't know. And then that willingness, it's this little willingness to sit on that edge of that and lean in, and allowing that growth of the experience of that to really bring you that life to the forefront, and know that it is a work of art, like everything that we express. And legacy is something that comes to mind right now. Yeah, what do you want to be known for? What are you here for? And that might be not grandiose at all, but you are the creator and you are your own masterpiece. So that, to me, is it in a nutshell.
I love that. I love you. Thank you for sharing that so beautifully. I love courage and willingness, and have so much capacity to just, like you said, live our best lives in every way that presents. And I know that our listeners will be fascinated with some of the topics that you talked about today. And I really invite them to start having a bit of a play. Michelle's beginner meditation program is fabulous. It's a great way to really sort of step in and start to kind of feel into how that could be transformative in your life. And then
I just had the thought drop in, Catherine, I'm sorry, but this is where you have to let go of perfection. So
exactly
that series, when I was learning meditation, because if we're teachers at all ages and stages, then just teach. And that's what I was taught from our teachers, is just teach this. And it was the way that I up-leveled my own ability to be able to teach meditation and to experience it for myself. So if you lean into that, it is going to teach you that perfection is not at the forefront of making sure you can put a course out online that's absolutely polished and beautiful and ticks all of the right boxes. It's around just giving it a go, because if you really believe in sharing something worthwhile and valuable, just do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And just showing up.
Mm-hmm.
I know that we could continue these conversations for a lot longer, but it's just been fantastic to hear more about your journey, the things you're doing, who you're working with. And on the OneQuest site, there's your courses and links through to your socials and your website, so people can reach out to you if they need to book you for a speaking event or corporate programs. But yeah, it's been so wonderful to have you on for the podcast today.
And I just want to really recommend the Live Your Best Life Blueprint program. It is an absolutely amazing course. It is so full of practices and journeys and just so much self-inquiry. I found it to be very transformative in my practice, and I just highly recommend it. So please, everybody, have a bit of a look at the Live Your Best Life Blueprint program on OneQuest.
Thank you.
It is
Thank you so
truly
much,
life-changing.
Allow me to come in and talk into this. It's really special. So appreciate that.
Thanks again, Michelle.